Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stitching Tales, a podcast about all things sewing and what it's really like to run a sewing business. I am Johanna Lundström of The Last Stitch.
And I am Malena and Hjerpe of the Hazelhen Patterns.
And in today's episode, we're going to talk about how to organize your sewing space. I'm just going to move away from the mic here for a second if you're watching the video version.
Johanna is not showcasing her best side. Of the two of us, you are definitely the more organized one when it comes to sewing space and everything. Why is it looking... I don't think it looks messy behind you, but it doesn't look as organized as it usually does. Why is that?
No, because this is also my content day, as we say in the business. I am filming, so I'm filming updates to my jean sewing course, and I also film some reels. So it's really messy. Previously I tripped over some cables, so a lamp fell over me. And then I accidentally had forgot to turn my serger off, so when I was moving around, I happened to touch the pedal with the foot when I was trying to get behind my cutting table, and so the serger started without any fabrics in it. So today is not a good day in terms of organization, for sure, but that's the reality of it. Now, I'm really curious, what would you say? You would say that you're an organized sewist, or more of a, how shall I say it, take it on the fly, or how would you label yourself?
Yeah, I wish I was more organized. I'm not chaos, but I'm more like organized chaos. Like, yeah, my desk is a bit messy, but I know where everything is. I keep track on, like, in that sense. I know where things are not organized, but I kind of know my mess. I'm really at home here in my family. A classic thing, like, who keeps track of things and who knows where everything is? Well, me. I have pretty good visual memory. Like, if I see something, I remember it. I know where it is. But yeah, I wish I was more organized. I wish I had. I like don't have the patience to clean away my previous project when I'm done before I start a new one. So it kind of piles up, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty common thing, and I think we can all agree on that sewing is messy. So if you're looking for inspiration and you look on Instagram or TikTok or Pinterest for sewing spaces, they're usually so neat and organized. And the reality is that you can't keep it organized while sewing. I mean, obviously you will have fabric scraps, thread snippets, tools all over the place. There will be, cables and half sewn projects at one place, and you will have the cut pieces that needs to be stitched. So, it's a massive project to keep organized, and I don't think anyone during sewing can honestly say that, yeah, I'm super organized, because then you will spend as much time organizing than sewing, which is, in my opinion, a bit of a waste of time, I think, because you want to get into that flow, right? And I guess that's for you as well. You say you have an organized chaos in that sense, that you know where things are, but you don't want to have spending time picking up and organizing because you're busy sewing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it takes. There's a fine line between, like, okay, now this mess is becoming burden, and, like, when you're sewing with an overlocker, for example, and if you have things that, in the way when you're sewing, and then things can happen, like the fabric can get caught. You don't notice when the fabric gets caught in the overlocker, like underneath layer of fabric, and you accidentally cut into the wrong fabric. Like, that's where the line is, like, ooh, don't be that messy that you can't sew in a good flow. But the pile, when you sew with an overlocker, there are gonna be, like, lint, like when you cut away, if you cut away the extra fabric, there is going to be a little pile of things you need to throw away eventually. But I'm not going to clean out that mess, everything after every single seam. That would take too much time.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't imagine that. You know, cleaning it away, then going over with a micro cloth, basically to get rid of all the lint, microfiber cloth, and you know, the next second, the new fabrics scraps will pile up. So I agree with you. I mean, cleaning only becomes an issue when it starts to affect your sewing. So, for instance, in my case, because I have 3 machines on a fairly small sewing table, if too many things are starting to pile up on the table, I need to get some type of organization, because all of a sudden I don't even have space for my project in that sense. So that's usually my like deal breaker in terms of when I need to clean during the projects. So are you mentioned that you're not how should I say, you don't have to have a clean desk in order to start sewing, right? You can have
No, not sewing, not working, not not
having
anything in life. I wish I were, but no, I'm more of a like, I want to start it now. I don't have time to, you know, organize myself before. I want to start it right away. So I'm a little bit too eager and not stressed out, but like, you know, I don't have the patience to clean, unfortunately. I wish I were.
Yeah.
But you are gonna, we talked about this earlier as well. You're gonna do some changes in your work life. And also I want to say, like, of course we understand that, I mean, we work with this, so we have dedicated spaces for our sewing, for our pattern making, cutting. Most people don't have that. For most people it's a hobby, and you use the kitchen table, and yeah, if you have a dedicated sewing space, that is amazing, but not everyone has that. So it is tricky then to, you know, keep everything organized.
I mean, totally, yeah. With more space, the easier it gets. And I think a lot of us started sewing, as you say, on the kitchen table, or maybe on an office desk, and you have to maybe move all the things away every time after you've been sewing, which definitely forces you to be organized in one way. On the other
Or you
hand,
just scooch it into a corner.
exactly. I mean, that's also a possible scenario. And also, of course, with space, I would say that it's easier to be organized if you have more space, because then you can have dedicated storage. But just to bring you back to the point where you said earlier, Malena, yeah. So as I mentioned in the start of this episode, I have a content day. So I don't just sew, surprise, surprise. This is also business. So a lot of time when I sew, I have to produce content for various channels, which means that I have to have even more struggles when it comes to organization. So hopefully, if all goes to plan, in November, as I mentioned in a previous episode, I will be able to move my sewing space, which is part of the studio, which I share with a friend, move that to a separate room. Then I can have all things set up properly, especially both in terms of organization, but also the fact that I can have lamps and camera stands and all these things set up. So that's definitely something I am gonna share with you guys as well, your listeners, when I start to do that. And of course, I will update content on my various channels for that. But I will say I won't make massive changes, because I think I have a pretty good solid system already, and that has taken me years and years to organize. But first of all, I thought about, you know, we have different things, I guess, when we're sewing. So if we start with fabrics, I'm curious, Malena, how do you store your fabrics?
I store them folded up in one of those classic IKEA shelves.
Yeah, calyx, I think they're called. Yeah. Calyx, yeah.
So yeah, they are just folded and in there. And most fabric is fine being stored that way. I think the most important when you store your fabric is if you have them hanging. I don't know if anyone would do that, but they can stretch it out, can stretch in various ways. So just be mindful about that, and also direct sunlight. The sun can be pretty strong. I mean, it can bleach the color. So yeah, be careful with that. And I mean, obviously, if you see how they are stored in a store, like a proper fabric store, they are usually rolled on a roll or something, or like folded in more. They are not so much folded as they are rolled, and that of course you don't get so much creases then. I mean, I have some very old, really stiff denim fabric, 20 years old, and they have been folded like several times now. And if I would ever sew with that, they are gonna be pretty tough to get away with, like remove those creases. Just pressing might not do the work even. So I do try to be a bit mindful with how I fold them, how I store them. But I use mostly also knitted fabric, so they are not as sensitive, I would say. How do you don't have that much fabric stored, first of
No,
all.
yeah, we took the right for, yeah, true that. And I will definitely, if you go over to our Instagram account, Stitching Tales Pod, we're definitely going to post some pictures on how we store things, especially the fabric storage, so you can see Malena's system and mine. So I try to keep my stash fairly low, but I mean, that's relative. I guess someone who wasn't sewing would be appalled by the amount of fabric I have, but someone who's keen on sewing knows all too well that fabric shopping is a hobby all in itself. But yeah, so what I do is that I have big plastic containers. I have currently 2, and there I have a very simple system. One is woven and one is knits. I also have a few smaller boxes for specialty fabrics, but roughly that's my system. And as you say, it's a little bit difficult. There will be creases. So what I do, I try to roll the fabric. I mean, like you would do what you're supposed to do in a wardrobe. Instead of folding your t-shirts, you roll them. And also when you're like packaging for a holiday or something like that, I try to do the same thing with the fabrics. Like I make them into tiny rolls, and since we are not a manufacturer sewist, we don't really need more than a couple of yards, a couple of meters of fabric. So there's no point in having large rolls or for everything. So we just have tiny pieces, and that's why you have to figure out a way. And I think that the rolling in the plastic bin, that allows me to store a lot of fabric in a small space, and it also keeps it away from light, because actually I'm at standing desk when I'm recording this podcast, and underneath that standing desk, that's where I store my fabric. I had 2 large plastic boxes on wheels. That's the not very cute fabric storage. So I don't do any organization in terms of prints or color. I just roll them and pile them in, and when the box is full, that's definitely a sign that no, Johanna, you gotta stop doing that fabric shopping. This is the max. And it actually works quite well. It's also a good reminder that, when they're full, I should resist buying more fabrics.
Yeah,
but
because
yeah.
I mean, storage, time, and money, you can always adapt to the amount that you have, like fairly easily. So yeah, it is good to have. Sometimes it's quite good to have limited storage space, so you're not allowed to buy anything more.
Yeah, oh, totally. I love, I mean, if you're very, how shall I say, very particular about fabrics, I've seen some people, and you buy a lot of beautiful fabrics, and I've seen people using glass cupboards or shelves with glass doors, and then you can organize the fabric into colorways and prints and fold them very specifically. That's not the world that I operate in, but I mean, good for you. It's a nice eye candy, but realistically, I don't think a lot of us serious sewists have that way. Again, I think we have to keep it realistically. We're not doing interior design here. We want to create a functional sewing space, and I think that's why both you and we are pretty happy about our system, even though it's not picture pretty in that sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely my storage way is not, and also the I mean, I've spoken several times about this. The way I shop fabric, I when I sew, I usually sew samples, and then it's just cheaper fabric, whatever color there was on sale. I use that, and then sure, I have my more fancier fabric as well. But I'm pretty muted in my color aesthetics, so it's not. Yeah, it's a little weird mix, so to say, on my fabrics that I actually got. And I do have a little bit too much, and sometimes a little bit too old fabrics. I should do some. I've been thinking several times now that I need to do some clean out, but
Yeah.
get the time to do that.
Yeah, they're probably not the most fun thing. I mean, I
No.
think it's definitely. So what I do, I have in the plastic boxes, I have, full length of fabrics that I can sew garment with. And then I have a small box inside my cutting table, which is I think I can post a picture of it, but then I have fabric scraps. And when that box is full, I actually don't have to throw them away. So it's because you do generate a lot of fabric scraps, and it's good to have. But eventually, how many fabric scraps do you actually need? I mean, if you can't even sew a full garment, it's just enough to test small details and test stitching with. So yeah, I mean, we all want to do be mindful about the waist, but yeah, it is tricky. I mean, I guess I can make a lot of those hair scrunchies. Those that was popular in the 80s. That had made a huge comeback now with those fabric covered hair scrunchies. But apart from that, it's really difficult to make use out of small, and of course underwear you could do as well, but it's a little bit tricky. So eventually you have to get rid of some of the fabrics. I think that's probably where we all end up doing. Another thing that I'm curious to hear your thoughts about, which is a little bit tricky, and that is thread storage. So how do you store your threads?
Well, I do have one. What do you say? Bureau. When you pull out drawers.
Yeah.
I have one of those that are more for, I think, saving
Drawers, right? Yeah.
Yeah, drawers where they are, sorry, they're not so deep. So that's a pretty good place to store the fabric, especially the overlock combs that are pretty big. I have had one of those IKEA that you put on a wall that you
Pegboards.
can have like pegboards where you can store them as well. But to be honest, I have 70% of my overlock threads just in a plastic bag.
All right.
Because we have taken them home because I saw something here, and then taken them back to the office, and they have ended up in a plastic bag. Yeah. We can see on the video that you have your a little bit more prettier organized on the wall.
Yeah, definitely. So if you're watching the video version, in behind me, you can see I have this spool rack, which has longer pins for all overlock threads. So I have those on the wall, and I will say, and I'm very aware of that this is not actually the ideal way of storing thread, because it can gather lint and it can be exposed to sunlight, so that could cause the thread to deteriorate. Sorry if I can't pronounce that right. Quicker. But the thing is that, first of all, right in the studio there is never any direct sunlight. Secondly, this is serger thread, so they honestly, because you're usually using at least 3 or 4 threads, I personally find that it's not as dependent on durability compared to a regular good quality sewing thread. So that's why I'm a little bit more laxed about it. And also it's so nice to be able to just pull out my arm, pick something from the rack and onto the cover stitch machine or the serger. So for me, I like to remove friction as much as possible. So this thread rack hangs just above my sewing machine, which is why I have this, but I will say I'm naturally aware of it. I do also, just like you, store threads in drawers. So some of the overlock thread I don't use as much, I have in drawers. But primarily as I'm a big IKEA fan, because surprise, surprise, because we are based in Sweden, uh, the Kallax that we talked about, where you store your fabrics, they also have drawer inserts. So I have like a tower of two Kallax shelves stored on top of each other, and it's wonderful because you can get those plastic inserts with pins that you can buy from, say, Amazon or eBay or something like that. And then you can just so I have those inside the drawers, and then those regular sewing machine spools, I have those organized both in color, and also I have top stitching thread in a separate section. And I would definitely post a picture of that as well over at our Instagram account, because that has been also really, really helpful for me. So I don't store all my threads in daylight, so to speak. And I also, of course, just like you, I have one of those where I just throw stuff in, because I mean, it's impossible. It's impossible to keep organized. I mean, whew, good luck to you. Yeah, because if I would be that specific, I would not have the energy or time to sew, for sure. So you have to find a balance that works. So for me, it's what helps me organized in general is that I have what you call, I think, excuse my French now, but I think it's called like mise en place, which is everything in its place, which is the word for chefs. I don't know if they talk about that in the beer, because I know you're a big fan of the beer.
I haven't heard about it, but
No.
But yeah, no, everything needs its own
everything.
space.
So every kitchen utensil have a specific hanger or a storage space. So at the end of I mean, guess usually both when you're working and of course after the it's done, you make sure that all the things are in place, which removes friction. So that's my secret, basically. I have dedicated spaces for pretty much everything, so I don't mix threads with other type of sewing tools in my drawers. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's the best organizing tip ever. I mean, in general, also in life, like have dedicated space for certain things. You won't have to search for them then. And actually, to make it a habit, I think that's the most difficult part, to actually put them back after you have used them.
Totally.
Because I mean, searching for seam ripper or the scissor, it is so annoying.
So annoying, yeah. So what I do, I actually have a little bit of a bonus tip here, which because right now I'm about to start sewing a pair of jeans, and what I'm holding up now for the video is just a small metal candy tin, and in that I have like denim needles, the thread I plan to use, bobbins for the different colorways, and already spool on thread, and I will also use some. I don't think it has space for the seam ripper, but all those tiny tools. So every time I switch thread spool or color, this needs to go back in this metal box, not on the table, not on the floor, only in the box. Of course, I do struggle sometimes, but just having this next to my sewing machine has been really helpful, because that helps me. And also I kind of enjoy it now, because I haven't started sewing yet. I just cut the fabric. Yesterday I wind the bobbins and I looked up the needles and I just placed it, and I felt like, oh, right, now I'm mentally ready to start sewing jeans.
Yeah, and it looks
so
pretty.
It can help.
I mean, also the box, it matches your color thread even.
Yeah, right. It's this cure, like, what's the metal, the golden metal, like brass or something like that.
Yeah,
it's just a candy box, those chocolate candy box. Or, yeah, those hard bonbons. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it becomes more fun also if you do a little pre-prep, basically. And yeah, I mean, some things are really important to keep track of. For example, sewing needles. You are supposed to change them every now and then, but if you are home sewist, I mean, it's, yeah, when the needle is damaged and when you feel it's damaged, then obviously that's time to change them. Preferably a bit earlier, but we're maybe not all perfect there. But the way I try to keep track of them, if I change the needle, I mean, if I switch from a woven to a jersey, a ballpoint needle, I always place the old needle that can still be used, but I'm not going to use it now. I place it in the type of fabric that it's supposed to be sewn in. So the jersey
Brilliant.
needle I place in, like I stick it into some jersey fabric, and the woven in a woven fabric. So then it's easier to keep track of which one is for jersey and which one is for woven, because it is pretty difficult to tell. Some are have like a color system, but not all of them do. So that is, I find it pretty easy to keep track then of, and I store them both then also in a box, so I don't lose track of the needles.
Yeah, that's a very, very, very good tip. I haven't thought about that, and I'm definitely going to apply that as well. And another tip for when it comes to needles, now I mentioned that I try to keep them in this box, but another tip that I do is that sometimes you have to switch between, for instance, when you're sewing denim, I usually have to switch between 3 different needles, top stitching needle, denim needle, and a regular needle for sewing lining fabric on your sewing machine. So I actually have another thing I do is sometimes I have a piece of blue tack, häftmassa as we say in Sweden, you know what I mean, Malena? And I just that blue tack is that gooey stuff that you can put things together with. It's like a rubbery thing. So I just put that on the side of the sewing machine, and then I press the head of the needle into that gooey blue tack. So I just need to push, and then because it doesn't really affect, because the needle, that it's just the head of the needle is the blue tack, so it doesn't get anything residue on the actual needle. And I think that's also like a really cheap way of like doing quick needle storage, just on the side of the sewing machine. Just
yeah.
place it there.
You don't lose them then they keep in place.
Exactly, because that's a problem. I think as soon as you don't have a place for your needles, when you have to switch back and forth, it's almost impossible to find the needles, especially when you mix the fact that we say you have thread, you have fabric, you have lint, you might have cut pieces of your projects on the floor, and then you're going to find your needle as well. Talk about finding a needle in a haystack. I mean,
yeah.
literally.
Yeah, literally.
Literally. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure, and of course, we are just saying how we work, and we love to hear your ideas as well. So you can always comment either on Instagram account Stitching Tales Pod or over at the YouTube channel Stitching Tales Pod. But I think there's a lots of brilliant ways, and so nice to share, because as the thing you said about the fabric, I hadn't thought about that. So great idea.
How do you store your patterns? Your paper patterns?
Oh, yeah. So I have a couple of different systems for that. So sometimes when I'm doing several patterns over and over again, I like to trace them on some type of firmer paper. And those I have a specialty hanging tool, which unfortunately no longer is sold, but I bought it in the UK. It's basically one of those professional pattern hanger. So I just pierce a hole into every pattern piece, and then I can hang it down. And those are for my kind of like sloper patterns, so my go-to patterns. Then, of course, I have a lot of tissue patterns, like traditional tissue patterns. And those I store in boxes that I put in plastic envelopes. And then I have different boxes like A to K maybe, and K to way. So I had 2 different boxes for the brand name. And then for cut pattern pieces, I used to have a really good system where I, again, use a plastic envelope. And then I'm not great at drawing, but I just took a pen and draw a very rough sketch of the pattern, like the blouse. And then I just wrote, for Bird Style magazine, the number. And then I just place it there, and that was such a great visual thing. But then I began forgetting to pull the cut pattern piece back in the plastic envelope. So now it's just everything is so that's one of the things I need to organize before the move here. I need to match again the cut pattern pieces and the plastic envelopes with a little drawing on. So it's a disaster currently. So lots of different ways. No, some are better than others. So how do you store your patterns?
Well, I usually just roll them up, tie a little bow on them, and I usually try to write, so when I pick it up, I instantly see which one it is and also which size it is. But then I don't have a specific place for them, and also since I mostly sew my own patterns during like when I develop the samples. I always am a little bit like, is this the latest pattern or have I done updates afterwards? I don't really keep track, so in the end, I usually print out new patterns anyway. And also, like, for the most of the time, for the kids' pattern, for example, well, then I know I haven't done any changes to them. But obviously, kids have grown, so I can't use that size anymore. So I need to reprint them. And yeah, it's a little bit of a mess. But I have one of those big like printers, plotters. They are like 60 centimeters. I don't know how much that is in inches, but it's fairly wide. So I can print them out. I don't need to print out A4 patterns and piece them together. I can print out the patterns directly. So I mean, obviously that is a huge game changer. It goes so much quicker than. So it has been easier. If I'm not sure, I always want to print out the latest version of the pattern. But yeah, it's kind of a mess. It's not an organized way.
Yeah. It's so boring to organize pattern. I guess that's why it's so boring. I think if I would be able to do that right now, I would have to bring an iPad or something like that to my studio, or do it in front of a TV series or a film or something like that, just to distract my mind a little bit. I cannot see that I will be able to do this in silence. It's just too much of a hurdle. And I get, because you have to, as you say, you have to like open everything up, and it's not intuitive, which is the right one. It's just such a, compared to say organizing your buttons or things like that, that's pretty straightforward, but you have to be so focused on getting everything right. So, and you know, maybe you have a piece that is missing. Where did that go? Where did that end up? And then you have pattern pieces all over the floor. I mean, oof. Yeah, it's a struggle. I feel, actually, I'm relieved to hear that you're not on top of all this either, and I'm sure Malena's rolling her eyes now if you're watching the video. So, and I'm pretty sure that not everyone who's listening to this podcast has all the ducks in the rows as well. I think it's pattern are the worst, and the more you sew, the more pattern you generate. And I try it sometimes because I like to resew a lot of stuff over and over again. I have to be organized with the pattern because I don't want to, because for instance I use a lot of Bird Style magazine, and while I would say I hate organizing patterns, what I hate even more is having to retrace and add seam allowance on those extremely dense pattern sheets that the pattern magazine have, and so that to me is even worse. So I should be more motivated to keep better track of my traced patterns for sure.
Yeah, and this is something that I've really trying to be mindful and develop and improve over time as well, like how I make my own PDF patterns that I sell, and to be really have the customer's way of working in mind. So I try to, for example, I try to always add as much information as possible on each pattern piece that you print out. Like, so what is this? Is it the neckband? Is it the 80% neck stretched out neckband? Or like how much, since I have two types of neckband for the t-shirt, for example, which one is it? Is it for the rib one or is it for the shell fabric option? So you know which one it is. Is the seam allowance included? It is, I mean, so I write that on each pattern piece, like seam allowance is included, like 1 centimeter, 3/8-inch seam allowance. I don't have that info on my oldest pattern. That is something that I will update. I have it written elsewhere, but not on the specific pattern piece. Yeah. And when you trim away all the extra fabric, I mean, then that information is lost. So I want them to be on each single piece that that the seam allowance is included. So you don't, because if you pick up the pattern that you cut it out a year ago, if you don't remember, I have to go back and track all the information. I mean, that's so annoying. So I try to really like keep that in mind when I make my patterns, that what information is needed on each pattern piece. So it's as clear as possible, not just for the first time, but a year after when you have forgotten all the information, that it's all there. So that is something really, because it is so annoying to like, is the seam allowance included or not? I'm not sure. Like, do I need to go back and track and measure? Boring. So it needs to be as simple, clear as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I try to do the same thing. I mean, I also have seam allowance on every pattern piece, the name of the pattern on every pattern piece. I also tried, and I think another tricky thing, because there's so much information, and then we're working with layers. So I have the sizing of each pattern piece along the cutting line. So I have to be really careful that when you cut the pattern, that the measurement is included, so you don't accidentally cut away, because that can also be an issue later on. For instance, when you, did I cut a 38 or a 40 that time, or if you have two different sizes, which piece goes where? So I mean, as you say, you have to be really think about all the things that can happen from us doing the pattern until it's actually in the hands of the sewist. And it also really helps that way, because we're also sewing our own patterns. So that means that we are constantly reminded of this. So it's very good. I totally agree with you. I think every information needs to be on every piece, because sometimes also you might use a different kind of allowance. At least I have done that on a couple of pattern pieces, small. So that's also good to have that clearly marked then.
If you don't clean away, put away the pattern before you start the new project, all of a sudden you have two different patterns mixed on the table, and so it should be so easy to clearly see which one is which. So they need to be named really properly. And I was thinking in the future, I got a tip from a listener to in the sewing instructions, like. Before, we have all the very detailed sewing instructions, but to actually start with a summary. So they are just like 10 points or whatever, like not with pictures, just clearly like each and every step.
1, 2, 3.
A summary basically. And I think I'm going to in future have that on one of the pattern pieces as well, so you actually have it on the actual paper
brilliant
pattern.
That's brilliant.
I think someone is doing this already. I'm not coming up with new ideas, so I'm stealing it from somebody, but I love it. I mean, that is such a clever way.
I didn't think about that. I do have it in my sewing instructions. I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, like a bullet list, and then also page references for each step. So I do all both things, but I had thought about it, using it on a pattern. I mean, whoever came up with that, great for you. You're a genius. Sorry that we can't credit you, but I guess these kind of ideas can happen in lots of different places. But what a good idea.
Yeah,
what a good idea.
Because maybe you don't print out the sewing instructions. Maybe you just have it on tablet. Maybe you have read it already. But when you read the summary on the physical paper pattern, you remember what you're supposed to do. So that one, in the future, I will definitely do that.
That's going to be on my list as well, including more projectiles patterns. I mean, my latest video patterns are projectors, but I sometimes get asked about my older patterns, and I'm like, it will happen someday. There are lots of days left, hopefully. So so many things as we talk about in this podcast, the realities of running this solo business and doing lots of other stuff as well, and wearing many hats. So unfortunately, everything between a good idea and it's actually being executed is not always.
But I also love that you're able to evolve during the process. You learn new things, you can improve things, you realize things, and so nice to have a digital product then that you can actually improve along the way. It is so good. I have stuff I want to do, small things I want to improve. those kind of, how do you say, user-friendly things. I want to improve on my older patterns as well. One day. We'll see.
One day, yeah. Yeah, but I agree with you. It's so fun. I mean, I love to think about it's so funny. You think, okay, I thought about everything. And then you realize, no, those tiny things, you can always do small improvements that give
Yeah.
such a great satisfaction to like tweak things that you can just do a little bit better. I've done that with so many things that I've created over the years. So, and also when I'm doing reprints of my sewing books, I usually do a couple of tweaks as well, just because I figure out a few ways of doing things better compared to when I started out. So you always learn. Another thing, going back to organizing, how do you organize your tools?
It's on the table,
Well,
so I can see them, so I know where they are. What do you mean? I have a drawer
yeah,
that I shove everything in.
Weren't we talking about that French term, mise en place?
Yeah.
Is that the table?
It's no, I mean, the scissor is always on the cutting table. That's where it is. And then I have some drawers. I have some plastic boxes where I have like specific sewing tools. But I don't have that many different specific tools either. So like they fit pretty well in one box. So, and it's a little bit of a hot mess in that box. So,
Yeah.
What do you do? I feel like you have better organization
So
there.
many things. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I'm like, do I have OCD? Maybe. But yeah, I have so many different ways. I could do definitely an episode just on that particular topic. But I do have for smaller tools in those IKEA shelves that I talked about, the drawers. I don't just store thread in those. I also have these small plastic mini boxes that you can buy to organize toolboxes and put maybe screws and things like that in. Then there I have for smaller tools and pressing foot like things like that. I have separate boxes. So again, everything goes into a specific box. And for larger tools, I have the IKEA pegboard that we talked about previously here. I think it's awesome. So there I hang my rulers, my rotary cutters, certain piercing tools. I have my hammer. I even have my iron on that, and lots of other things as well. So I do have a pretty good system, and also have hooks where I hang all my scissors. Because for me, I mean, just today, because my sewing space is such a mess right now, I was trying to find the pattern notcher, which is where you cut through tiny holes in the pattern to make it easy to mark notches. I mean, I probably spent like 10 minutes looking for it, and I don't want that kind of friction in my sewing life, because that definitely, it kills my sewing happiness. So for me, having tools reasonably organized, and also what I did, I think you said it first, and I've done it too, is I have this thread snipper, the tiny scissors. I now have an elastic band, so I always keep it around my neck when I'm sewing, because that tiny little thread snipper, I have no idea, it must have legs or something, and it can run far away.
Yeah.
Far. It's the same with the seam ripper. I have no idea how it kind of folds out legs and run as far as it possibly can. I don't know. It seems like so. I have no idea how things travel, but that's why I have to try to keep them reasonably organized. I mean, the tricky part for me is during sewing, because that's where I do struggle with those small tools like the seam ripper and some other those micro tools. I do tend to drop them and having to search for them. So I'm not optimal in that sense, but I always clean my sewing space once I'm done, and always hangs everything back, because that's how I like to start, with that clean slate.
Yeah, I mean, in life, I'm not a hoarder, but I have really difficulty like letting go of things, cleaning away things. So I try not to buy so much, and I don't have that many specific tools for specific things. So
Yeah.
how I'm trying to live my life, basically. To not have too many things. Obviously, I have way too much already. But yeah, it is searching for the seam ripper when you already are a bit annoyed why you have to search for the seam ripper.
Yep, because there's always an annoying, right? That's a very good point. You have a good point because you're already mad when you have to find your seam ripper because something went wrong.
Yeah,
You don't
and
never
those
do
kind
that
of
for fun.
things. I mean, I don't encourage people to overconsumption, but having like 3 seam rippers is totally fine. Those are like such small things. So you have one in the correct place, one lost, and one that you use. Then it is a little bit easier to find one of them at least.
Yeah.
But, we've all been
agree with
there
you.
searching, especially also searching for fabric piece that you have cut it out, and it's like, where did the neckband go? And you're trying to find it, and that's also why I never like unpin. I always pin when I cut out, pin the pattern to the fabric, so they stick together, and I don't remove the pattern from the fabric until I'm gonna sew with it. Then it's a little bit easier to keep track of the pattern pieces or the fabric pieces as well, because that's the most annoying part, to search for a neckband. And maybe you threw away the scrap or you thought it was a scrap and you threw it in the garbage. I mean, I think we all been there.
Yeah, we've all been there. And my favorite way of ruining is to pick up a neckband and think, oh, nice, have a scrap. I can test the stitch settings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it still happens. Because since I usually use pattern waste rather than pins, what I do is that I usually put a piece of tape, like freezer tape, on the pattern pieces, and I write down like both also I put it on the right side of the fabric, because sometimes I find it difficult, especially as I get older with the sights. It's terrible. Just to see that I know that it's on the right side, so I don't have to think twice on whether or not I'm sewing on the right or wrong side up. And also I just write a little note, the neckband, and I try to keep all the pieces in one place. But once you start sewing, it's like I'm not even conscious about what I'm doing. I mean, clearly I drop things on the floor while I'm sewing, even though, I mean, it wouldn't be too difficult to just turn a little bit to the side and place it along other pieces that you're sewing. But all of a sudden, it's the entire corner that I sew is spread out pieces all over the place. I mean, I don't know. Someone need to film me. Am I actually throwing things behind the back and throwing them across the floor? I mean, you would think that based on the fact, but that tells you how I mean, I think we're not very conscious while we're sewing. I mean, we're not very alert and mindful. I mean, clearly you're focused on sewing, so you have no idea how your body moves or things like that. So I agree, having a good system, like, as you say, keeping the pattern piece pinned to the fabric, or mark it in some way, or maybe have a dedicated spot close to your sewing table or on your sewing table if you have the space to, once you've done a specific thing. Because I've ruined so many. I mean, I mean, sometimes, I mean, it's easy. It's more difficult with things like pockets and neckband, because they seem like scraps if you don't look too closely. But I've even done that with larger pieces as well. Just, oh, there was a cut piece. Nice. I can just search through that and see. And then, oh, that was a sleeve, right? Yeah.
Oh no.
Great, Johanna. Great.
Yeah, it's a struggle, and I have actually bought a couple of. It was a sewing friend who gave me this tip to store everything that has to do with that specific sewing project into. I think it's also again from IKEA. We are not sponsored by IKEA, just FYI, but we do love
we
them.
wish.
Storage.
Right.
I mean, they
Call
know their
us.
stuff. Yeah, but they had this. It wasn't like plastic. I'm gonna take pictures of them, but I think it's basically that you store clothes in wardrobes, but they have like a zip. It's like fabric box basically with a zipper, so you can place things. I mean, winter coats,
Yeah,
duvets,
I
like
have those. Yeah, I know
these kind of
exactly what
things.
you mean.
Yeah,
They're very
and
nice because they take no space when you
no,
don't use
yeah,
them, and then it's there like
they're
almost like a
pretty
box.
big, so you can
Yeah,
have
pretty
like
big. Yeah,
you can have
mm,
like a jacket project there
yeah.
easily. So she had everything in one of those. Um, when she, I mean, if you're working with several different projects, you can have one of those each for each project. So you have all the threads, all the pattern pieces, everything in there if you are
Mm,
working with a different
nice. Mm,
project simultaneously. So I have bought
mm,
them. I haven't used them yet because I usually don't work on several projects simultaneously.
yeah,
I usually
mm,
do one. I could sew two things at the same time if I sew like two bilberry tops, for example, for the photo shoot. I do the same. I batch sew basically, but
mm.
then I mean I have them all different colors, so it's easy to keep them apart. But I don't start something completely different in the same time before I'm finished with them. But I know a lot of people do have several
Yeah, they go back
projects
and forth between. Yeah.
on the same time, so those kind of things could be pretty convenient to store them away or like keep track of everything so you don't misplace something.
Yeah, that's a really brilliant tip. I hadn't thought about that either. I use obviously those for clothing storage, but yeah, and they comes in different sizes as well. So there are also smaller ones that has a similar construction. I usually do not work on several projects either because for me, I get such my reward system is very motivated by finishing stuff. So if I have three half sewn garments, my reward system is underfed and sadness will happen. So, from a mental health perspective, I like to do one thing at a time. I have tried batch cutting because that makes sense because you already put out all the tools and but the problem is when if I'm the first one is of course I don't love cutting, but you know it's fine. Then the second garment, the sadness starts to seep in. And the third one, I'm like, I never ever want to cut anything ever again. So for my to keep my love of sewing, I have decided that batching is not for me.
But I think that also depends on what type of garment you are
Mm,
sewing. I mean, I have sewn joggers and t-shirts. I mean, those are fairly quick projects, so you
yeah.
can cut out those two or three at a
Mm,
time. Like it's a quick sew as well. I mean,
yeah.
jersey, just overlock it and you're done. If you jeans, for example, I mean that's a pretty big project. I would
Mm,
never ever cut two jeans at the same time, and I mean that would be too much to keep track of. Or if you're sewing a jacket with lining and everything. I mean, I understand if you need to take a break sometimes from that kind of a project and just sew a t-shirt in between just to get something
mm,
done fairly quick.
yeah.
So I do understand if you have it as a hobby and you have different difficulty
Mm,
levels on your projects that you work with several projects at the same time.
yeah.
So yeah, storing them in a decent way is it could be good then.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah,
I think it's pretty common. Even though you and I don't do it much, I think it's pretty common, and it also makes sense because sometimes if you are maybe struggling with a more, as you say, difficult project like sewing a jacket, maybe it's a nice way to get some rest from that to just go and do something that gives you that reward and simplicity. For instance, a T-shirt. So I totally get that, and that definitely also brings up more organization skills, and I definitely when I do samples for my patterns, for instance, when I did a video pass, of course, then I cut all the things. But as you say, it's just a couple of pieces. It's knits. It's fine to do cutting. But as soon as I have to think too much, it just yeah. You have so the good thing you can do it in so many different ways. I think that's what we always try to bring home is that you do you right because the way that makes you happy. So if you don't want to spend too much time cleaning your desk after you sew the product, then don't. And if you're like me, you get a little bit uncomfortable if the desk isn't clean, then do me. So, I mean, we all have the freedoms, and that's why I love talking about this. We're not giving you the correct answer of how to organize sewing. We're just talking about how we do things, and as both you and I also realize, we do have some room for improvements as well. And I think that's probably what it's always going to be like. I mean, I've tried to organize my sewing stuff for, many decades now, and I still have not figured everything out. So I guess that's how it's going to be for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and it also depends so much on your specific situation. I mean, we work with this. It's our job. Other people sew for fun. It's their hobby. So, I mean, obviously you're going to have different approach to it and different setup and, yeah, room in your home to do this as well. So whatever works for you, obviously. But we want to hear if anyone has some amazing tips or tricks, or how do you organize your sewing space. And I mean, there are also these shelves. I think you both have them in the bathroom, like there is 3 shelves on a wheel that you can roll around. I've seen people use them and put even a small ironing board on top of them and have like a super organized, nice looking, like they have the their threads, their overlock threads and everything there. So there are so many nice things that you can buy to help yourself being organized. So if you have any tip on those kind of things, like, feel free to share them.
Yeah, definitely. And so also we are talking about a lot of things now that we are not able to show you, but if you go over to our Instagram account, Stitch and Tails Pod, we definitely update every week with the photos on the things. Maybe not this exact same minute as the podcast episode is posted, so keep checking back because it will happen sooner or later. So you can see a lot of the stuff we're talking about now, and perhaps get some inspiration and ideas as well, because I think I really love to see how other people organize it. And I would also post a photo of my current messy situation. I actually took a photo just before this episode because I thought it was a good idea to show you what it also looks like, because I think a lot of the other photos I have, it looks kind of neat, which is a little bit deceptive, I think. So you will see both realities if you go over to our Instagram account.
Yeah, and I will try to go to my studio and take some photos of my situation. It's not going to be pretty. Just a heads up. It's not going to be as nice as Johanna's space.
Yeah, but that's how we work. We also, as I say, we have working spaces. This is not an interior decoration thing. It's a place for work, and it should show. That's my philosophy on organizing things. Absolutely. All right then. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I am Johanna Lundström.
And I am Malena and Hjerpe. Bye bye.
Bye bye.